science couldn't explain it. But there it was, alive in the deep, deep waters of the Amazon. A throwback to a creature that had existed 100 million years ago, immensely strong and destructive. A woman's beauty, the bait that brought it out of its lair. See underwater thrills never photographed before. See titanic underwater battles never dreamed of before in this most terrifying of the science fiction adventures.
Horror Hounds, welcome to episode 18 of the Black Sunday Tapes Classic Horror. This is part 8, our final part for now on the Universal Monster films. We've been on this journey for a while. It's definitely been up and down, and we're coming to a film that I'm very, very interested to get Michael's thoughts on. I am talking of 1954's Creature from the Black Lagoon, and no hanging about. I just need to jump in this one because when I first asked you, Michael, to join me on not only the Classic Horror podcast, but we were going to do a Universal Monster series, you had only seen 2 of the films we touched on, Frankenstein and Creature. Is that correct? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Frankenstein you adored.
Oh, yeah.
Creature, complete opposite, right?
Did
just
not
didn't
care
land.
for it. Oh,
right.
I mean, like, I wanted to like it, and the Creature, oh my God, the Creature was amazing. Anytime the Creature's on screen, I was like, yes, more, all of this. But the humans, I utterly forgettable, don't care about them at all.
Yeah,
like, that was the only kind of like way I could, at the time I saw it, put my feelings into words.
I get why it might not have landed with you. I also get why, if you're following along with this 8-part series and there is a bit of a jump into Creature, definitely a huge jump into the B movie territory, why this might not land as well for you. I also understand why people love it. But with that said, having gone down that journey, having watched 7 other Universal Monster films now, how do you feel about it now? What was your reaction now?
My reaction now is I largely feel the same in terms of what I said, like that humans are kind of forgettable, kind of don't care. But I'm able to contextualize why in more of a film-related vernacular. Basically, the way I feel about the acting in the film is what I sort of discovered earlier. I don't remember which episode it finally clicked for me. It's not that it's old-timey, it's that it's theatrical. And then I was able to contextualize all of the performances and all of the films going forward. And I was like, boom, okay, I'm here, I'm there, I get it.
Right, gotcha.
And this feels to me to be the film acting equivalent of that, in as much as the lines sound more natural, but not a single person at any point is doing anything other than posing and mugging for the camera, ever.
Yeah.
Every single actor on screen is like, I'm going to soak up every bit of attention, and I'm going to do my best to get the attention. Just in the way that they're holding themselves and pose. Anyway, I don't know. Like, it's I didn't hate it, but at the same time, it's like there's so much better acting in other films we've discussed in just this journey, and I'm like, this is what 20 years after most of them. Like,
yeah.
Some of the rear projection technology. I'm like, if the Uninvited had like believable rear projection, why was it such a standout sore thumb in this film? You know what I mean? Like,
I get it. So based on that, and you saying this is coming like 20 years after, which you're totally right. I would say out of like the 8 we've done, this is certainly the most of its time. And the reason I say that, right, is we're talking about 1954. We are smack bang in the middle of the 50s. This is strong B-movie territory. As I touched on our Wolfman episode, they were kind of pushing that way a little bit. You know, it become a little bit cheaper and stuff. But the Wolfman still kind of fits into the Frankenstein, Dracula, mummy world in a way. This is straight up B movie, right? Like, this is straight up 1950s cheap cinema. What is your relationship, if any, with that decade of cinema? Are you Have you seen a lot of B movies from that era? Have you seen a lot of,
Yes.
and I'm talking about like the genre as well. Like horror was pretty much straight up B movie. Like
Yeah.
if you went through like every decade, right, you could pick out like a silent film, and then you get into the 20s and the 30s, you're hitting your Draculas, your Frankensteins, you're moving up into your 40s with the Wolfman and stuff like that. And then right, like if you jump the 50s, go to the 60s, then you're starting to see a lot of films that we covered on this podcast, like loads of Carnival of Souls, all
Yeah.
those kind of films where it becomes a little bit more independent stuff. 70s, now we're starting to get into some really gory horror stuff. 80s, obviously it needs
Yeah.
no introduction. 90s, blah blah blah. The one that always kind of gets missed is the 50s, right? There's not too much of a definitive film from the 50s as there is, or like
No.
a group of definitive films. And I think that is because in the 50s it is properly like pushed down into that B movie territory. It's like you've always got B movies, and then you've always got like A pictures within the horror genre. But I
Right.
kind of feel like 50s was like, nah, man, we just got B pictures. We ain't got
Okay.
anything else. So like, yeah, so coming back to that question again, what is your relationship with those 50s films and those B movies? Is it something that you are tapped into, or is it something you haven't seen that much and maybe that's why Creature didn't gel as well with you?
I actually like siphoned a lot of it, by which I mean going back, touching upon our first episode, Carnival of Souls.
Yes.
The first version of it that I saw was like this really degraded public domain version of it that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
included in a set of 50 horror films. And I also had a 50 sci-fi film set, and I had those because they were my father's, and when he moved, he didn't want to take them with him.
Uh-huh.
And like you'll get a kick out of this. Somebody will laugh when they hear this. I unironically every Christmas we as a family watch Santa Claus Conquers the Martian,
Oh
the
yeah.
MST3K episode, the movie. Okay, so like I'm tapped into what those movies are,
Yeah. Yeah,
and so
gotcha.
when I saw the first time I saw Creature, I was like, "But what? People talk about this? This is the movie? What? Why?"
Yeah.
And then the Creature shows up. I'm like, "No, that's cool. Like this movie? Why? Come on!" And it's a movie that's been aped in like infinite times. I mean, Anaconda just is this movie.
So
Like,
do you think that that was kind of something I wanted to get onto actually, and you've just touched on it. So that definitely played a role with you, like the legend of Creature, right? Because I would
yeah,
argue that up against like the out and out king of the Universal monsters is Frankenstein, right? And then just behind that you've got like Bride, Dracula, then probably like Wolfman. But like Creature's up there. Like Creature, you
well,
see
as an
Creature
iconic
stuff, yeah,
image, undeniably,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, you see Creature more than Wolfman, definitely more than the Mummy or Phantom of the Opera.
Well, let's
You
be honest though,
arguably
it's
you see
more
it
of
more
a
than
visually
Dracula,
interesting character. Like,
definitely. But do you think that played a role in you knew how famous the image of the creature is? So then when you come to watch it for the first time, it just did not live up to the hype, right? It was not like because
the
Frankenstein lives
film
up to
didn't
the
live up
hype.
to the quality of the film didn't live up to the quality of the creature.
Yes, yes, yeah.
That's
I
that's
see what you mean.
that's the thing I
I
can
definitely see
say.
what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see what you mean. So let's jump into the film a little bit. What did you like? What really stood out to you about the film?
Well, this time I was actually very, very taken with the cinematography.
Okay,
Is
okay.
pretty impressive. And like one of my notes was, man, if it looks this good in 2D, what's it gonna look like in 3D?
Yeah, yeah,
And like as a colorblind individual, it worked on me. But if I ever get my hands on like a PlayStation VR or something, this set has a contemporary technology 3D
yeah,
version
yeah.
on it. So that would be really cool to
Yeah,
see.
that would be interesting. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It would be very interesting to see a 3D version because
Yeah, on
they
the
shot it
commentary,
for 3D, right? Like
yeah,
the whole
absolutely.
release of this was planned for 3D, and there was going to be a really big push, and they shot a lot of stuff for the effect of stuff jumping out of camera and stuff like that. So yeah, I agree, man. It'd be
That's why
very
they
interesting
shot
to
it
see
in
that.
black and white, was so
Yes,
that
yeah,
they could better control the 3D imagery.
yeah,
The underwater photography specifically in 3D played in a fashion that people didn't expect because it was full of depth. it was like looking into a room,
Yeah.
and I was I think the only time I like some of the best 3D work I've seen is like, did you see Coraline in 3D?
Yes. Yeah.
Ah, dude,
Incredible.
that spiderweb tunnel thing,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
like, I'm so glad I saw that in 3D.
Yeah. 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 There's some great. If
Anyway, so
you're
like
if you're
that's
into
how it felt
3D,
like
there's some
going
great
in.
films out there, man. There's some
Yeah.
great 3D films out there. Yeah, especially of like the Avatar boom when it all come back. Like Avatar obviously is outstanding 3D, and then I think one of my favorites is the Martin Scorsese film Hugo. I saw
Dude,
that in 3D, and
okay,
my God, that
we're
looks good.
we're talking about Creature, which was shot in 3D, so we really need to go on a little bit of a 3D kick because 3D means a whole lot to me, and Hugo is part of that.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, go on. Yeah, tell that story.
All right, so short. Okay, so if you've been listening for a little while, you might know I'm red colorblind. So 3D just it maybe was inches off the screen as opposed to completely off the screen in my face type stuff. So it was just whatever. The first time I saw really 3D was a friend of mine took me to Disneyland, and I saw the Honey I Shrunk the Audience.
Oh
And
yeah,
like, that's
yeah,
impressive Disney tech 3D, and I was like, holy moly! I couldn't,
yeah.
like, everybody around me, like even people that didn't know me in my immediate area, were enjoying me more than they were enjoying what they were watching because I was just. And then the first movie I saw was the first re-release of Nightmare Before Christmas when they did it. They threw it up at the El Capitan,
Oh, cool.
and
Yeah,
like
when
that
Disney
movie's
actually
just,
took ownership over it.
oh yeah.
Yeah, when Disney
And
were
I
like,
mean,
yeah, this
like,
is one of our films, and it was like,
they
ah,
there was a display in the basement of sets and puppets.
oh, that's
Like,
cool.
it was next level bonkers. And then it was one of my favorite films, and it's in 3D, and I can perceive it. And shortly thereafter, the 3D boom hits.
Yeah,
So, like, I don't know if you saw Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, but a
no, I
friend of mine
haven't.
really
No.
loved that book, so we went to go see the movie, but he was categorically against. Like, did Abraham Lincoln just have a horse thrown at his face? I think he did. I need to go back and see this in 3D. And it was really interesting and educational because there was a blurriness in the 2D image that I noticed at the edges of almost every large crowd scene. And when I saw it in 3D, it wasn't there at all.
Oh, interesting.
And this same guy I saw Hugo with in 2D.
Oh,
And
okay.
I was like, oh my God, this movie is amazing for so many reasons.
Yeah,
Like, tears, you know what I'm talking about. The
yeah, I
whole
love that film. Yes.
tears. And and then I went back and I saw it in 3D. And one of the things that I was like, oh my God, like, things I didn't think would be absolutely mind blowing in 3D just were. And then some of the stuff I expected to be like really, really, really crazy in 3D. I was like, oh, that was cool, like,
Yeah, I
the
agree.
ladder being like the train going through the station. I thought
Yeah.
was cool, but I didn't think it was like mind blowing. But just the tracking shot at the beginning as he's going through
Oh, through
the
everything. Yeah.
station,
Oh,
the way that the fog
that's one of the
like
best
like
shots I've ever
laid
seen.
in, oh my God, it was just, oh my God. I mean,
Yeah, it was
I'm in
incredible.
3D, and it's just, oh dude.
Yeah,
Anyway.
it was absolutely incredible, man. Like I absolutely loved it. Like Hugo, that's the one that always stands. Whenever people say to me about like good 3D film, like that's the one.
Mhm.
It just worked, and also it makes sense.
Surprisingly, Texas Chainsaw 3D actually has some really impressive.
Do you know? Do you know what the best use of 3D I've ever seen is? Tron Legacy.
Okay.
Now I saw that in 3D IMAX, and
I
the
saw it two
have
or
you
three
seen it?
times, and one of them was in 3D, but I don't remember if it was. I did was not 3D IMAX. That's for sure.
So the opening of the film isn't 3D, is it? It's 2D,
Right.
and it isn't until they go into
Oh, the transition.
yes,
Yeah.
it's like Wizard of Oz, man. It's like that
Yeah.
black and white to color.
A hundred
Like there's a
percent. Yeah.
story reason for it. It's absolutely fucking incredible. Really is. Really, really is. Right. Enough about 3D. Let's get back to Creature. Jump back in. So yeah, dude, what else did you love about the film?
I was able to appreciate, like I said, like, contextualize what I didn't care for about the performances, and then cut to the last, I don't know, 15 minutes. Like, the first time I actually was like, oh shit, I'm paying attention and kind of caring, was when they were deducting the how to use, like, the sleeping pills or whatever on him. They make the
Oh
little
yeah. Yeah.
They dropped the Alka-Seltzer in the water, and when they were figuring that out, I was like, oh, okay, I'm kind of involved. Oh, look, there's 10, 15 minutes of this movie left. Okay.
Yeah.
But also, like, there's something about just, I guess, like they're finally trying to do something other than just be impressive to each other.
Yeah.
I guess that's
Yeah.
yeah. I like
No,
that.
I
I
like I
appreciate
said, I see where you're coming from.
the score is nice. I really like the
Yeah,
score.
my reaction like is a little bit different with the actors. I think that Julie Adams is really, really great as the main heroine of the whole piece. I really, really like her.
She
And
is
then
definitely the standout.
yes,
I was
definitely
gonna
the
say
standout.
like if
Definitely
I'm
the
gonna
standout.
remember anything, it's definitely her stuff.
Oh hell yes, hell yeah. And then there's just there's moments, there's nice moments around the film. There's nice moments to do with the creature and the hinting at, is the creature the bad guy, or are we imposing and destroying his world? Are we destroying his landscape? There's that really great shot of, I believe it is Julie Adams that's smoking a cigarette, right? And then she like throws it into the water, and there's that great shot of the cigarette going down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
the creature looking at it, and it like it's kind of those moments to blur the lines between, oh, who is the hero and the villain here? I kind of get what he's doing now. There's been stories of like, did that stuff actually mean anything? Were they trying to say any of it? In retrospect, people are like, yeah, of course it does. Of course it means something. I think actually one of the dudes that played the creature actually took credit for that and said that he come up with it and stuff. But there's definitely stuff there. There's definitely context there too. Is the creature the bad guy? Or are they the bad guy? So that's what I like about it, because that stays true to the Universal monster stuff. That stays true to all the best monster and myth stuffs to me. The other actors, I would say, that definitely need to get a little shout out here are the two actors, or I should say, the two stuntmen that portray the
The
creature.
creature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they
The lead weights in the feet.
right,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Just so
The
I should say
being
that
blind essentially.
yes, oh yes, yeah. So the two actors slash stuntmen I am referring to are Rico Browning, who played the creature while in water, and Ben Chapman, who plays the creature while on land. I'm not really sure why I know they shot him in two different locations. Like all the water stuff is
I
shot in
think it
Florida.
had to do with the fact that the one dude was like a world class swimmer. I think
Yeah, definitely. But what I don't
something
know
along
why
those lines.
he then just couldn't do the land stuff as well.
Oh,
Like
good
he
question.
seems
Yeah.
perfectly capable, right? But yeah, I know that the water stuff was shot in Florida, and all the land stuff and the boat stuff was shot in California on sets that they built. So maybe it was just a location thing. Who knows?
There's actually an interesting bit of trivia about all of that, where the scene, I think it's very, very, very early on in the film, where they're literally just like right, they're in a boat and they're arriving at like a dock situation when they meet like the male lead,
Oh yeah, okay.
and over the course of that what like 10, 20-second 30-second shot of them just like in the boat going there and then getting out of the boat, it was 3 locations, 4 days, 7 actors portraying 3 characters.
It's insane, isn't
I
it?
mean,
Like it's
come on,
just crazy. Yeah.
talk about movie magic and shit.
I mean, especially back in the day, man. Like they used to do that shit all the time. Like just really match stuff up with a million different locations. That, and also when you just did not need to do it, but hey, that's how you make films. So that's the way we're going to do it. Rico Brown and Ben Chapman, Julie Adams, they're all stand out for me. I think Julie Adams is really good. I think actually her stuff with a creature is really good. And just the stuff those guys put into the creature. Like,
Yeah,
I've always said, which I know you completely agree with, is the monsters, they could be on screen for 30 seconds. It does not work unless the actor works. Like it
right.
doesn't, the image is cool. Like there's a lot of like modern cinema, right? That has some good creatures, there's some good monsters, but it just doesn't work. They just don't live up to what you want them to live up to. And I think a lot of that down to the time is a lot of the time those actors are just treated as people in a costume and you just stand there and do whatever.
Yeah,
They're not given the license to put a bit of life into that character. These guys definitely do that. They definitely put life into it. Just the way, you know, Rico Browning is swimming through through the water, and the way
yeah.
he puts,
The way he holds his body is he's just
yeah,
sort
the
of
way he
like
holds his body, the way
undulating and just
exactly.
looking.
Exactly, man. The way he looks, the little movements, the little head moves, the way Ben Chapman does exactly the same, but on land. And especially as you touched on right off the bat, as I started talking about the creatures, was they were completely blind in those
Yeah.
suits. The creature's eyes were part of the suit, which is an insane way to go about it. But
Yeah.
they literally couldn't see. They literally couldn't see, and the costume was pretty goddamn heavy. So to put into it what they do, and to it is a bit slow. It's a bit, especially when you look at it today, especially because of the way makeup's evolved. But
Yeah.
this was also quite a big step forward for makeup, like full on creature suits
Yeah. I
of
mean,
this
just the way
level.
that the gills will actually undulate,
Oh,
like
that's my
kind of
favorite effect.
individually,
That's my
as
favorite
the
effect.
water
Yeah,
cascades off of them.
yeah.
Like,
Well, that's the only thing they could really do, right? Because they couldn't control the eyes, they couldn't control anything like that. But there was a little like pump that they had, like that ran down the arm, and then so the actors were able to control the gills. But that's the
okay.
only effect they had on those suits. But my god, does it work? Like it's
Mm,
so effective. Like the first time, because going back and watching this for our episode here is the first time I'd watched this in HD. First time I'd watched it on Blu-ray, and the clarity of that image when I can't remember exactly when it happens in the film, but it's when the gill man jumps up onto the boat and then he's walking towards camera and
mhm.
it just perfectly captures them gills
Oh
opening
yeah.
and closing. It's stunning, man. Like you said, with the water coming off him and
I think one of the
yeah.
most impressive shots to me in the entire film is they just caught him and they have him in their little like cage or whatever,
Oh
and
yeah.
just
Yeah.
the way that they've so specifically artistically directed the light and
Yep.
the angles of
Yep.
it and how it's bouncing off of the water and off of him, giving him that like glowy ethereal thing go. I
Yes.
just so
Yeah,
good.
it's incredible, man. And like the early setup of like all this film, right, is directly taken for Jaws. Like the shark doesn't want to
Well,
run off with a girl, but apart from that, like the whole idea of this shark, trying to trap it and kill it, them stranded on the boat, them wondering if they're in over their heads. Like there's a lot of stuff, and I wonder if the production of Jaws had gone as originally planned, where they could have shown more of the shark and the animatronic actually worked as it was meant to.
mhm.
I wonder if we would have got a lot more of a B movie than we actually got. I definitely
I'm
like.
gonna
I
have to
mean,
go with yes.
yeah, I think so. I don't. I mean, it's very well credited that Spielberg has said that everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, but actually that completely benefited the film. It made it 10 times scarier and made it a much better film. But yeah, I think if you look at the way this is presented and then those little bits of Jaws and the bits you kind of know that are missing from Jaws because the shark weren't working,
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like we would have got a real straight up B movie that wouldn't have been as successful, wouldn't have been as scary as the film is, or definitely was when it come out.
I could be making this up, but I swear I've read or heard like Spielberg talking about like he's like, well, if we had shown it as much as we wanted, it wouldn't have worked.
No, no, definitely not. It wouldn't have, and it was like that mixed with John Williams' score because he gets to really play
Yeah.
with that score, and that's where all the tension that comes from. If you show that shark all the time, you don't get that. There's no
No.
need for that score, or the score doesn't play out the same way. But yeah, this is definitely a big influence, a massive, massive influence on it. So while we're on the creature, you touched on off the top, you really like the suit. Even the first time when you watch this film and it did not gel with you,
Mhm.
the suit really worked. The creature really worked.
Mhm.
Apart from the gills, apart from the effect on the gills, comparing this to the other Universal monsters a lot. Obviously, Jack Pierce. This is not Jack Pierce. This is in a completely different era. How does
Right.
this? Obviously, the whole world of Hollywood was changing, but how does this stack up to you? And what are the other things that you really like about this creature design, if you will?
Well, as much as maybe I don't care for the film, I actually really do like the creature. Like it's hard for me like say favorites in anything. I try sometimes just because that's what people
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, like if you're forcing me, like It's this and or Frankenstein like at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I really like this is fucking high on my all time, not just the Universal stuff. Like I've seen countless films that try really hard, but none of them achieve
Yeah. Yeah.
this. Like the proportions of it, even though there's a lack of mobility, there's just enough, and they use what they do and don't have in the right ways that you
Yeah.
still get emotion out of it.
Yeah, man.
Like I don't know, man. Like it's no Doug Jones and Shape of Water, but it's fucking
Oh, but that doesn't exist
close
without this.
without
Like,
this.
yeah, that doesn't
Exactly.
exist without this. There's
Exactly.
no way. Yeah.
Well, clearly, I mean, like that film came out of the fact that Del Toro didn't get to make his Creature remake.
There you
So
go. Yeah,
there you
exactly.
go.
Yeah. Have you seen the original design for the creature? Like what they were originally going to go with?
I heard a lot about most of them, and I think I've seen one or two, but like I didn't like except for the one that's like more human, the one they wound up going with as like the female version of it
Yeah. So it
in the
was like it was a lot
sequels.
cleaner, a lot
Okay.
smoother, and it was
Yeah.
actually based on the Oscar statue.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was based on the Oscar statue, and it was a lot cleaner. It was a lot, but it just didn't really work. But yeah, like you said, they kind of kept it around and decided, you know what, this would be the female creature later on. So yeah, there was a little bit of controversy around this film that thankfully it has been cleared up. So if you actually look at the credits on this film, there was only one makeup designer credited for the whole thing, even though there was quite a few makeup people on this. There's only one, and it's a dude called Bud Westmore. Now he was, I believe, the head of Universal Makeup. I'm not sure if he took over from Jack Pierce. Actually, I think he might have, but he was, especially from what I understand, a couple of years into being the head of Universal Makeup, he was very full of himself without doing a hell of a lot of work. And I'm sure back in his day and in his own time, he was a great makeup artist, right? He got the job somehow. But he was the kind of guy who kind of led all the makeup artists to do stuff and then took the credit. Hey, I come up with a creature. I designed it. That actually isn't true whatsoever. And it is recently, I say recently, within the last good few years. The creature was actually designed by a woman called
Yeah.
Millie St. Patrick.
Yeah.
And there are photos that come out of her with the creature costume design. And she, I mean, she was kind of a little bit like a lot of the makeup artists back then. She was kind of forgotten about, but she was like really talented, man. Like she was a former Disney illustrator before she moved
Hmm.
on to Universal. And then, yeah, she moved on to Universal, and she, despite Bud Westmore for most of history taking complete ownership of the creature, actually it was her that done the majority of the legwork and really come up with the design of the creature. So yeah, it's nice to see her getting the credit she deserves. And unfortunately, it is just another story of a man taking credit for a woman's work in Hollywood, which
Hmm.
unfortunately is all too common back in the day. And well, let's be honest, it still happens now. But yeah,
Mm.
well,
Well,
that had to
well.
be mentioned, that had to be brought up because it is an outstanding creature design. It's one of the
Thank
best
you
creature
so much.
designs of all time. It really is. It's
100%.
yeah,
People
it's
people overuse that phrase, but there's a reason that if you show that image to almost anyone on the planet who has any kind of a pop culture, they probably know what it is.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think what Universal up until this point, I mean, it kind of fell off a little bit from here, didn't it? This is maybe their last great hurrah with a real creature design. Obviously, they moved more onto the Spielberg type stuff from Jaws and E.T. and I mean, you could definitely argue E.T. is one of the best creature designs of all time if you want to put it that way. But
It's
in terms of like
pretty
that,
cool.
yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, but in terms of that, like early Universal monster stuff, they literally set the standard for what those creatures look like. If you ask someone to draw you a picture of Dracula, they're drawing a version of Lugosi. If you ask
Most
someone
likely.
to draw you Frankenstein, it's Karloff.
It's
Arguably, if you ask someone to draw you a mummy, it's the Karloff version or the Jack Pierce version. They really, really know how to define that image. And then you could argue there is no amphibious gill man like creature that doesn't take something from the creature. Like there is nothing. They all. You just brought up Del Toro.
Mm.
That is like, yeah, the makeup on that is incredible. And Doug Jones is one of the best creature performers of all time. But
Ever.
that doesn't exist without this.
No,
No way does that
not at all.
exist without this. Yeah, the amount of stories that have been told, they all take something from this, man. Yeah, so that needed to be said. This is without doubt one of the best, and definitely one of my favorites. I think that, yeah, this film does fall a little bit short in areas, but there are things that really stand up and make this an absolute classic. The same as Dracula. Like, I would argue, out of everything, at the 8 Universal films we've set up here, we actually start and end on what I think are probably the weakest, which is Dracula and Creature. I would argue that every film in between is stronger than those are,
I'm
top to bottom.
no, I'm not mad at that.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, you're
exactly.
right. Yeah.
Definitely. So what did you we've got to touch on him a little bit. So Creature is directed by a gentleman by the name of Jack Arnold. So he didn't become as famous as a Todd Browning or a James Wow, who went on to do, a lot of big other stuff. I mean, he definitely done some stuff. He ended up directing a ton of TV in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I believe. And most notably, I believe he done a ton of episodes on the Brady Bunch. But what did you think of the direction of this film? And did you even really notice the direction compared to a James Wow or even a Todd Browning from Dracula? Sorry.
It was one of those that like I didn't feel the director's fingers as much maybe, but at the same
Yes.
time, like I'm damn skippy. You don't get. I mean, the DP is responsible for the image, but at the same time, like the director's got something to do with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like
Definitely.
the and as maybe sort of like wooden as I found some of the performances, they he definitely managed his he knew how and where to put everybody so that he fill his frame in a very David Fincher way. Is to say like even if you don't particularly care for the content of the story in a Fincher film, if you're a person like myself, well, there's at least enough life in the locations that you can stay involved.
Yeah, I know
So
exactly
like,
what you
and
mean. Yeah.
I felt that way about this film. Like the frame is always filled in interesting ways.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I feel like the direction is definitely isn't as loud as a James Wow, especially. But
Well,
yeah, yeah. I mean, who is right? But this, yeah, it does work. It does work. There's some nice, like I said, there's some nice moments throughout this film. I think that's the way I can really describe it. Is there's some really good moments, and I feel like they are all direction. They are, yeah. Like the cinematography is outstanding. The the stuff that was captured underwater is some of the best underwater photography you will ever see. And to think that it was shot in the early 50s is mind blowing, right? Because
right.
we can hardly get footage that good, today. But yeah, direction wise, I agree with you. I think the blocking of the actors is really, really good, especially on the boat, because there's a lot of people. Like there's a lot of people on that boat, and it could be very easy for that just to become a mass of people, and you don't know where anyone is, and you don't know,
Exactly.
you don't know
Exactly.
who's who.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's framed really well. And then there's also subtle choices, right? Like for instance, the two main gentlemen, when they're going into the water, their air tanks are slightly different. One wears one air tank, one wears two. And that was a director's choice to make sure that when they're underwater
You know
and they've
who's
got the
who.
face masks and everything, you can still tell who's who. It's just nice little choices like that that really work. The way that you don't see too much of the creature here and there. You don't see the really awkward moments that you could have got from the creature. You see him kind of approaching the boat, putting a hand on it, and then next you kind of see him like on the boat. You don't see the really awkward moment of like the creature stumbling over like the side of the boat, which
Yeah.
which sounds laughable, but the truth is you do see that stuff. Sometimes people show way too much.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes directors, I always think, especially nowadays, especially with independent film and stuff, and especially horror films, a lot of directors don't work within their budget. They try and do stuff that they have no right doing because they don't have the budget for it, and then they wonder why it looks fucking shit, and they wonder why it doesn't work out. Well, you should
On the
never
flip
have
of that,
tried
something
that.
that's really. Have you seen The Monster? There's a movie called The Monster.
Yes, I believe so. The car, is it where the
Yes.
car breaks down? And yeah,
Yes.
man, yeah, good film. I enjoyed that.
Then they use what they got perfectly.
Right, right. Like that's great direction. Great
Exactly.
direction. We're not gonna go over the top here. We're not gonna, you try and make your world as big as possible, but come on, work with what you got. I think that's what Jack Arnold does here. I think Jack Arnold works with what he's got. He's obviously not got, a giant budget. He knows that he's basically got two sets, right? He's got the
Pretty
boat
much.
and the lagoon. That's what he's got. He's got like two setups. And what he does within those, yeah, I think it really works. And also on that boat, like I said, there's a lot of people. It could just turn into this mass of people where you get confused. That has happened. I have seen films where stuff like that happens, especially where it's like one location or two locations. You're never guessing where someone is. You're never guessing what someone's doing. You're never completely taken out of it where you're like, whoa, why is that person there? What's that person do? Yeah, like you brought up the blocking, it really works. And then just certain shot choices, based on wherever the idea come from. But I'll go back to the cigarette thing. If it was the dude that played the creature that come with it, if it was Julie Adams that come with it, whoever it was that come with it, it still needs to be shot. It still needs to be worked out a way to do it. And the fact that they do so seamlessly go from her throwing it in to then the camera, watching the creature, see that cigarette float through the water. And yeah, it's just again the blocking of the creature, right?
Even though he's underwater, like you're expecting a single tear to roll.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the last thing I will say on directing, but also, we're going to put in their cinematography. I'm also going to throw Rico Brown in there for his performance in this scene.
Oh
It's one
yeah.
of the greatest scenes in cinema history. I will say cinema history.
Isn't that the one where he's got himself held all cockeyed, like he's like an L almost? Because that's I just that image to me is again one of the greatest in the movie.
Oh yeah, that's a great image. That one where I was going, but that is a great, yeah, that's a great image. Again, there are so many great images. That the one
See
I'm
it.
going with is the one where Julie Adams goes for the swim, and the creature or the gillman is swimming underneath her. And
Apparently the creature
oh,
designers referred to him as the beastie. I found that
the
cute.
beastie, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But that shot, man, that's one of the greatest shots in cinema history. That shot has been redone a million times in a million different ways. That
Yeah.
shot is the Jaws shot. The shot
Yeah.
looking up the
Yeah.
poster. The poster for Jaws is that shot.
100%. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but just the execution of that shot, the creature performer, Julie Adams, the way the light, the way the light cuts through, it's so iconic. It's so powerful. It's so, you could read so much into it. Look, they might have just meant it is a cool looking shot, but you can read so much into that. The fact that this creature, whatever it is, whatever this creature was, has now been pushed down to the bottom of the lagoon, and humans are now above. They've just got to look up. At one time, maybe they were the dominant species, and like I said, you can just read so much into it, which obviously people do. Maybe they just thought it was a beautiful shot. I would argue that is the beauty of great shots. That there's stories within those shots. They live
Absolutely.
forever.
Yeah.
They're parodied forever. Jaws is that poster for Jaws is widely considered the greatest poster of all time, and
I
you
can
don't
see that
have, yeah, definitely, you don't have that poster without that shot.
in
Like
any way,
that's
shape, or form.
no,
Yeah.
definitely not. Yeah. All right, dude. I like. Yeah, I'm gonna stop going on about that shot because I could go on about it forever. Is there any? I know you dived into the commentaries on this. You dived into a bit more of the behind the scenes.
A
Anything
little bit.
interesting that caught your eye?
I mean, I've touched on pretty much all of it, but there is a really interesting bit of trivia that I suppose we can we can end this particular journey on if you like.
Yes, definitely. Tell me. Throw it at me.
So, in Duel,
Okay.
the
Spielberg film.
yeah Spielberg film, the roar of the truck is a slowed and pitched down version of the Gillman's roar.
Wow. Wow, I had no idea. Just talking
Yeah.
about Spielberg and Jaws, and
Right.
yeah, there's an even deeper cut. That's amazing, man.
I
That's
found that
amazing. I
I was
love
like,
that.
right on. Good times.
I kind of want to go and watch Jaws now, just just to
Same.
hear that. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's what a deep cut that is. Wow, awesome, man. Right, I'm not going to top that. I'm not going to top that. So I'm just going to end it right there. Yeah,
All right.
it's good to be back, man. I'm glad.
It
I'm
really
glad we've
is.
done this.
Yeah.
And for now, that is the end of our Universal Monster stuff. We've got some other stuff we're going to dive into in the classic horror realm, but believe me, we will be back with Universal Monsters at some point, and we're obviously going to do a bit of a retrospect on the 8 films we've seen, and some of them that were your first time, Michael. So I definitely want to get your collective thoughts on the 8 most popular films in the genre. But yeah, dude, it's good to be back. Thank you for joining me
Absolutely. Yeah.
once again, and
I'm
thank
glad.
you
I'm
for.
glad you're back and able to do it, man.
Oh, thank you,
So,
thank you. Yeah, it was scary there for a while. COVID is it's no joke. Let's say it definitely hits you, and when it hits you hard, you know about it. Yeah, it's probably the worst I've ever felt, but I'm very very glad to be back and doing this, and yeah, it's good to be back talking classic horror, right? All right, dude. Thank you so much for joining me, boys and girls out there. Thank you so much for joining us again, as always. And until next week, stay very very safe, horror hounds.
take care, everybody.
Bye.